Texas Tech has looked unstoppable so far this season. Undefeated against the spread. Can Kansas at least cover the spread? We're going to get to know KU and Texas Tech ahead of this big matchup on Saturday down in Lubbock.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson with Locked On Jayhawks, joined by Chris Level of Locked On Texas Tech, and we've got a crossover episode for you today. Talk a little KU Texas Tech, and thank you so much for joining us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. Check out Locked On Texas Tech. Check out Locked On Jayhawks as well. We're going to get into top storylines and things that matter between these two teams. We get the players to watch. And how does Texas Tech come out on top? How does Kansas pull off the upset? All that coming up on today's episode of the show. Chris, thanks for hopping on today's episode. I mean, everything seems to be going very well for Texas Tech so far this season. I was high on the talent level that Tech had coming into the year, but my biggest question was the schedule. When you look at, at least on paper before the season started, maybe the three biggest games were on the road. Well, they handled Utah. They've blown everybody out so far. It feels like this isn't just one of the best teams in the conference, or the best team in the conference. It feels like this is one of the best teams in the country. So what to you has been so impressive about Texas Tech, and what is the importance of this game for the Red Raiders?
Yeah, Derek, thanks for hopping on with me too, and we'll kind of talk this out. I think this Texas Tech team is very talented. I think, like you said, I mean, the tests were going to, on paper anyway, we're going to come on the road. We thought you're not real sure how you get through the season. Like, I don't know if we all necessarily had Cincinnati as this upstart. I certainly thought they would be a sneaky good team. I saw that movie in Lubbock last year, and Texas Tech won 44-41, and a lot of those guys were back. So, as you just look at it, but you have all these new pieces. Can you mesh them together quickly? The biggest thing about this Texas Tech team to this point is, I guess what surprised me is that they've won the way that they have via the scores that they have, and yet they haven't played well. And what I mean by that is
That's terrifying.
They are heavily penalized. They left a bunch of points on the board in Houston the other night because they're just dropping the ball. I mean, just simple stuff. Maybe that's bye week, but 8 penalties for 120-something yards, I think, in Salt Lake City. They had it was 14 penalties for 122 yards. It was 8 penalties for another, football field worth of penalties in Houston. So in two games in the conference, I think they've had 22 penalties for just under 200 yards. I mean, you can't live like this. And yet it's caused some red zone issues. So that's the thing that's been, I guess, frustrating, but maybe it is. It's like, okay, well, it shows you the upside that you're still winning by what you are, even though you're just killing yourself. So, okay, now take me through Kansas, because I think there were some folks that gave them a chance to win this league in the summertime. There were some folks that thought they would be the sneaky good team, and it all revolved around Jalon Daniels, and rightfully so. Take me through the journey to this point, because I don't know, you hear these things, but they're not that far away from being 6-0.
No, they're really not. In fact, Joey McGuire said that he kind of brought that up in the press conference. And it's interesting because we're sitting here halfway through the season, and I'll be completely honest, I'm still trying to figure out what this Kansas team is. Like, I feel like we know what Texas Tech is at this point. Like, they are the most talented team in the Big 12. It would be like the goal at this point clearly is win the Big 12 for them, right? For Kansas, you look at the 4-2 record, and you could point to it both ways. You could say, hey, they're 4-2, and their conference wins right now are against UCF and West Virginia, and those could be two of the bottom 4 teams in the Big 12 this year. So it's like, how really impressive is that? On the flip side of it, you could view it as, okay, but they They destroyed Fresno State in week 0 of the season. That score was even closer. It was 31-7. It was closer than it could have been. They just sat on the lead from the third quarter on. And Fresno has won every game since. They're like 4-1 or 5-1. Decent Mountain West team. They were up 31-28 in the fourth quarter on Missouri. They gave up 2 fourth downs. Missouri goes down, scores. Kansas has a 3rd and long. They drop the pass. They punt. Missouri scores to end up making an 11-point win. But that was a winnable game for Kansas on the road against Missouri, who they might actually be a college football playoff team out of the SEC based on kind of their schedule ahead for them. Then you look at the loss to Cincinnati, and maybe the favorite for the Big 12 title games right now is an all red and black Big 12 game with the way Cincinnati looked in defeating Iowa State the other day, and that was a coin flip game that Kansas scores in the final 2 minutes. They had them down to 4th and 10, but they convert. And then Cincinnati ends up scoring with under a minute to go and winning the game by 3. You can easily point to it and say, yes, they could be 6-0. The problem that I have with it is that you go back to last year. Last season, Kansas was 1-5 in one-score games. And so, at some point, you're going to have to start winning these big games in one-score mode. And if you keep doing it, then it's hard for me to be like, yeah, they're so close to being 6-0, but it's like, but you keep losing those games. So why should you be? Now, they did win a one-score game against UCF. We'll see if that turns around the one-score mojo. That's what makes this really interesting to me is that, I think this really is a litmus test game for Kansas, because you lose this game by 7 when Texas Tech's beating everybody by, 20-plus points or whatever. And maybe you come away from this game saying, yeah, okay, you're 4-3, but your losses are to Missouri, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, all really good teams, all close games. 2 of those would be on the road. But it still would be a bit frustrating, too, because if you lose another one-score game – and another game where it's like, man, you've got to start beating some of these good teams at some point, it starts to wear at you a little bit. So that's kind of the story of Kansas right now, where, I don't know, are they just a 6-6, 7-5 team, or are they a team that can legitimately win 8 games?
Because I watched a lot of the Fresno game, I watched a lot of the Missouri game, and I watched a lot of the Cincinnati game. I did not see any of the UCF game or the West Virginia game, but it comes off as that this offense is a pain to deal with for the opposition, no matter who they've played. They're going to kind of figure it out and score enough points to at least, at the minimum, make things interesting. Is the defense been the reason why that this is there's a lot of questions, and have they not been as good as was hoped, or did everybody think that this is going to be a question mark all year? I mean, take me through that side of it, because that's where I'm coming at it from. It just appears that there's more questions on that side of the ball than there is on offense.
Yeah. And to your point on that offense, both games KU lost, technically the other team had extra prep for them. Missouri was playing an FCS team before they played Kansas. They probably were prepping for Kansas that week. Cincinnati had a bye week. Now you look at the defense, it's been either the best or the worst. That's been the thing this year for KU. So in the Missouri game, they couldn't stop them. They couldn't get off the field, especially 3rd and 4th downs. That's what killed Kansas in that game. When you look at the Cincinnati game, Cincinnati has 600 yards of offense. Now, Cincinnati is actually the only team ahead of Texas Tech in yards per play offensively right now in the Big 12, but that's certainly a little worrisome. UCF game, first half against UCF, they could not stop them. 4 drives for UCF, 4 scores. But in every other game, so you only give up 7 to Fresno State, you give up 7 to Wagner, you give up 10 to West Virginia, you give up 0 in the second half to UCF. It has been so hit or miss for this team. The thing that scares me in this matchup is you look at the common denominator between the teams who have had the most success, Missouri and Cincinnati. Those are the teams who probably that you've played so far have the best quarterbacks. And Behren, Morton, I guess Will Hammond too, would certainly loft up into being that category of being a good quarterback that you're facing against. And that is a little bit scary to me if they're just going to throw it around the yard on the KU defense.
Yeah, and it's been interesting around here because there's people that feel like Hammond should be after what they saw him do in the second half in Salt Lake City, I don't know if we are our best quarterback starting. You know how that stuff goes. And then Behren, he has a 28 for 40 night for 335, a touchdown, no interceptions, completed 70% of his passes against Houston, who I do think has a pretty good defense. I wasn't sure. I mean, I thought Utah did, and I would still say that they did. And I wasn't sure about Houston's after seeing it up close. I was very impressed it's a pain to play against. They drop a variety of people, and it's just kind of keep everything in front of you, and you got to kind of grind away at it. And yet there's some folks that are still frustrated with Behren Morton around here. It's just part of playing quarterback at Texas Tech, I guess. I see your Chiefs shirt on right there. Even when Pat Mahomes was out-dueled by Baker Mayfield years ago, I was going to do post-game interviews, and a fan screamed at, what was it, like 66-59 or something? And some Tech fan screams at Mahomes, "Learn the playbook, stop." And I'm just like, I've officially heard it all. I've officially heard it all. It's like whoever is defensive coordinator here, if they're any good at all, they can walk out to midfield and commit a crime, a felony crime, and somebody would be like, "That's the quarterback's fault." Whoever's calling plays go, they put the DC up to it. We love
59, not good enough. Yeah,
that's right. Just funny how that works. This is an interesting game because if you look at it from just big picture. You use the term litmus test. This is for Kansas. This is kind of a free spin of the wheel.
Yeah.
If you come in here and make it interesting or pull it off, it's kind of season changing, or could be, depending on what you do with it. And for Texas Tech, you're kind of starting to feel like you've got a lot of pressure on you. You've got to hold serve and all these things, and it's still so far to go. And I was surprised to hear, and I know you heard the same, but Joey McGuire's like, it's the biggest game I've ever coached in. And when I thought about that statement, I thought, what? I mean, like, already? Like, really? But I get where he's coming from, because a lot of this talk and hype and ranking and all that, it just kind of goes away if you slip up at home in a night game when you're a double-digit favorite and all those things. And it really gives you not much margin for error the rest of the way through, and you've got so much still to go. So I can see why he actually said that. And Texas Tech hasn't been home in like a month. You had 3 weeks at home, to start the season, and then you go to Salt Lake City. You have a bye week. You play Houston, and then so it's like 4 weeks between home games. So I know that everybody's chomping at the bit to see these guys back at home after what they've done on the road. But anyway, it sets up for an interesting game Saturday night in Lubbock, Texas. That's for sure.
We're going to break it more down, get to some players to watch in just a second with Locked On Jayhawks. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents available to the Napa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence like you want to with any season. We're getting close to winter where it's going to get a little shakier. Like our players, sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface. On your laptop or on your phone, Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And, for dumb brains like me, they have a lot of color coding that goes on, right? I just see green, good, red, bad. So you can kind of view it that way as well. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONCollege. We're talking with Locked On Texas Tech, Locked On Jayhawks for our Locked On crossover episode today on Locked On. And thanks for making it, again, your first listen every day. Check out Locked On College Basketball or Locked On College Football for your second listen every day. College basketball getting ready to start up here. College football, we're into another week with week 7. Catch up on everything going on this week over there. Real quick, before we get into players to watch, I'm curious, your perspective from because it's always funny for me. I remember my first year doing this with Locked On, and I said something about, like, I was previewing the KU Texas Tech game, and I was like, from KU standards, this series has been pretty close lately, and they're like losing all the games. And I remember getting some Texas Tech fans in the comment being like, "What do you mean? We're like 20 and whatever and 3 against you," or whatever the record is. I don't remember. And I'm like, I get it, but like from the Kansas perspective, you're grading it on a curve. They've had so many losing seasons, and there have been a lot of these close games lately. Now, obviously, the game a couple years ago where KU gets down to the third string quarterback, Behren Morton leads the last second drive. It was kind of a back and forth offensive game in 2022 between the two teams. You had the Kansas win on the dumb blocked field goal fumble against Texas Tech in 2019. Obviously, Texas Tech has owned a majority of the wins, but it does feel like this has been at least a close game, a competitive game here over a lot of these matchups here recently.
Yeah, it was 43-28 in Lubbock the last time in 22, and then 16-13 in 23. Look, you know this, and I think Coach McGuire has said it. That's what one of your biggest fears right before you're about to play Houston. I think there's a lot of similarities in Willie Fritz and Lance Leipold. These are just really, really good football coaches. It's not, and I think that they've built rosters that can be competitive, but they're just the attention to detail, just the discipline. It's not like Bill Snyder quite yet, but I mean, there's some of that, like with that old savvy veteran kind of thing that I think rubs off on everybody in their programs, and that you just kind of start to feel better about yourself. And so Coach Leipold deserves a lot of credit there. He is 0-3 versus Texas Tech, but a couple of those have been very competitive. And trust me, I get the third string quarterback stuff or second string quarterback stuff. Texas Tech's dealt with this for like a decade plus. Even when Mahomes was here one year, he had an AC sprain and played injured the entire year. And you were just like, hold on, just hold on. I think
Kansas hurt Mahomes one year. I want to say
maybe near the goal line.
Yeah, and I think the backup came in and just torched him actually more than Mahomes did. So it didn't work out too well for him.
Nick Shimanek maybe is who that.
Yeah, that might be right. Yeah.
But that's one of the things that, like I said, prior to the Houston game, it just kind of makes you nervous. Like, they got Willie Fritz over there. What's he up to? And that's the same thing I would look at it anytime you're playing Kansas right now. Is Coach Leipold and just kind of the preparation that will go into it, and do they find something that nobody else has seen that they can attack? And then when you have a quarterback that can extend plays, and the unscripted stuff is the scariest thing for teams to have to deal with, because you can't plan for it. That's the whole point. And that makes you a bit nervous. So that's why I think a lot of this is, and Texas Tech in the last decade-ish, you've been trying to search for some stability with your coach. I think you have it now, and I think this has got a chance to work. But prior to that, with Cliff and with Coach Wells and Coach Tuberville and all that, you're just kind of like, it just wasn't. But I think that these two programs now have got the right guy in charge for the long term.
Now, when we talk about players to watch in this one, I'm curious from your perspective, as I look to like what Kansas players are going to have such a huge importance. Tech has been so good at like everything so far this season. Is there something that you look at on the field where you're like, if they do lose a game this year, I could see it being because of this?
Well, the two guys that have the most pressure on them as it relates to Texas Tech football in Lubbock, Texas, and I've said this since the summer, are Joey McGuire and Behren Morton. Okay, that's just the way it works. That's the title that you have or the position that you play. And Behren just needs to, because he's kind of a gunslinger. He's very experienced. I think he's finally healthy, even though he's kind of been dinged up a bit this year. I think he is back to normal and feeling better. He's just got so many weapons around him, and I think what they're trying to get him to do is like, dude, you don't have to be a hero, man. Like the term "manage the game" is almost comes off to some as like derogatory, and I do think he plays differently than that at times. But you got all these bells and whistles around you. Use them all. Let them do their thing. You don't have to throw people open. You don't have to force anything and all that stuff. But the turnovers in Salt Lake City, that's why I bring him up. You had a couple of underthrown balls that ended up being picked off, and that's gets you in a bit of a pickle. And so, but you're right, Derek. I don't. Your defensive ends are as good as I've seen here, and that includes a guy that was the 7th pick in the draft by the Raiders a couple of years ago, in Tyree Wilson. They are key players in every game that you're going to play, just because Houston's offensive tackles were woefully overmatched. And so, if you can't get pressure, I guess is my point, or you over rush, that could be a problem if you're kind of losing that matchup with what you have with Jalon Daniels. And then if Behren Morton were to turn the ball over some, I think, that's what could create some problems for yourself. But we could go on and on, but it has to be Daniels and Henderson for you. Yes.
Yes, although there's a part of me that wonders if the KU defense, because those are the obvious ones. You're right on those. But if the KU defense is struggling again against a team who wants to throw it around the yard, there is a part of me that wonders, does KU try to play more ball control? And if they do that, it becomes Le'Shawn Williams. And Le'Shawn Williams, he's not getting more than, 12-ish carries in the game, but like he's running efficiently with it. He's been a solid running back. And so I wonder if this is the game that you unleash him for 20 carries and try to, keep the ball on your field a little bit more.
Is Daniel Highshaw, what's the latest there?
Out the last couple weeks. It's not been encouraging that when we get to those Wednesday night injury reports, he's like last week, he was just out. It wasn't even like questionable. And then you get to the game and he's so Lance Leipold mentioned at his presser this week that they're hopeful to get him back, but he didn't say like this week. He was talking about Deshaun Hanukkah, who was announced out for the season, the former starting tight end. And then he said with Highshaw, like we're hoping to get him back at some point. So if I'm reading between the tea leaves, I'm not really expecting him to go, but I've been wrong before. So we'll see.
Yeah. I would say it's funny. I would say that Kansas's best chance would be to throw it and move the pocket and let Daniels get involved in the run game a bit, running it up the middle or just running it in that's been, and again, it's shocking that I'm saying this. I want people to understand this because there were in fact, the last 2 times these 2 teams played, Kansas ran the ball for over 200 yards against Texas Tech, and that's just a normal day as a Red Raider fan of watching the defense play. I mean, that was just one of those went for 60 yards. It was a Devin Neal touchdown right up the gut. Like, of course, seen this movie before. To this point, even with all of that first-round talent that Utah supposedly has, nobody's just been able to run it at all. And shockingly, Houston, who had run the ball pretty good up, when their 4-0 start and everything, they basically said, we're not even going to try it anymore. We're going to take our chances with these edge guys coming around the edge and try to throw it. That's our only – we're going to make that choice, which I was a bit surprised by. And so I think Daniels will be the best quarterback that Texas Tech will have faced by a pretty wide margin. And it's funny because what year is this for him? 6th, 5th?
Yeah, year 6. He was 2020. He was a 17-year-old freshman in the COVID year.
And he's never played against Texas Tech.
Yeah. That's wild. I didn't even
he's never played against Texas Tech. Lance Leipold this would be the 4th game that Lance Leipold will have coached against Texas Tech in his tenure at Kansas, and he's never had Jalon Daniels playing for him in any of those games up until this coming Saturday night. Interesting note, I think. And so, but I know around here, it's a lot of you better study, you better learn, you better pay attention in these film sessions with all this motion and eye candy and shifting and all that. And then you better be disciplined with what you're doing if you are up front on defense and if you're at linebacker, because this guy will make you pay and all those things. So that's kind of, I'm fascinated by kind of that particular matchup for sure.
Yep. And Tech obviously has a All-American level linebacker of their own doing. That certainly helps out there as well.
He's been pretty good, Jacob Rodriguez. Yeah, I mean, I never thought before the year he was a Big 12 preseason Defensive Player of the Year. People going, is he like Zach Thomas good? And I mean, heck, I guess he could be better. I mean, which is saying a lot because we're thinking about the NFL version too. But I mean, Jacob Rodriguez. I mean, Zach Thomas was never Conference Player of the Year or anything like that. So anyway, it's he's playing at a very high level, though. Yes.
All right, let's finish up. How does Tech win this thing? How do they cover? How does Kansas win this game? This is Locked On Jayhawks, Locked On Texas Tech crossover. And today's episode of the show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards, Saquon Barkley rushing yards, or rushing touchdowns, and you're in the game. And with Prize Picks, they just added a new thing called stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. You think one guy's just going to have a monster game? There you go. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, Chris, so Texas Tech giving up a couple touchdowns on the spread here. I guess, first of all, like, it's a little different because for Texas Tech being the 2-touchdown favorite, like, they probably just win if they play their game. They just do their thing, right? So I guess, how do we go above and beyond that? How do they continue to blow another team out? How do they cover the spread as well? What do they have to do well in this one?
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, the self-inflicted, you know, the penalties, red zone issues, you know, turnovers, stuff like that. But those are, and you can also run the risk of just being too excitable at home and haven't been home, and just, you know, with all these portal guys, this is going to be one of the bigger crowds, because there's a lot of these portal guys they come from a lot of the group of 5 schools, you know, that they haven't played on some of these stages or dealt with this pressure or, you know, things like that, especially being on the home side of it. Usually they were like going to play those guarantee games where they're the road team going to play in it, you know, like Skylar Gill-Howard, one of the defensive tackles, he was part of the team that beat Notre Dame and upset Notre Dame early last season. But that is, you know, how I'm just kind of curious how they handle that. But around here, it's just been a lot of cleaning up what you can control. But I am interested if Kansas's defense can make this interesting. And if they, you know, create a couple of turnovers, get a couple of takeaways. I mean, both of these teams have been really good. I think they're like +5 and +6 on the season. So, but I just wonder too how many points Kansas can ultimately score on this defense. And again, you have to understand, it's crazy that this is what I'm saying, but I've just seen it. I thought Utah would do a little damage to you. They just had no answer. I thought, other than a DB falling down, you know, like in Houston, they just didn't have much of an answer. So, but Daniels is by far the best they will have seen. He may have to have a big night and for the most part mistake free. But if he does, I mean, and the Henderson kid, just his speed is the threat of a deep shot, you know, all that kind of stuff ought to make Texas Tech fans nervous.
Yeah, I think to me that's how Kansas, you know, pulls the upset here. Jalen Daniels has to be I don't know, hero ball, I guess, so to speak, or like Jalen Daniels. Basically, this is the headline on Monday. If Kansas wins the game, I think it's going to be, is Jalen Daniels a Heisman candidate?
Yeah.
Because I think that's the type of performance you're going to need for him to win on the road. And he has good stats to this point in the season. So I think that's where we're at. Yeah, I think the turnover battle, like Kansas has to win the turnover battle in this one. You can't go on the road against a better team and lose the turnover battle and expect to win. And then, yeah, I mean, do you have Did you find something like what you did in the second half against UCF where you gave up 0 points? Was that you finding something, or was that just like one good half of football? And what does that mean in Texas Tech?
Well, in your opinion, Derek, how good or bad do you think UCF is? I know what my thoughts are on UCF in the pecking order of the Big 12. I'm curious to see like how you would sit them.
I think they're certainly bottom 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Like
Oklahoma
State, West Virginia. I think UCF is better than West Virginia.
And
from a quarterback perspective,
and UCF is better than Oklahoma State too. Yeah. I mean, they just they're better than West Virginia and Oklahoma State. But that's where they're in that just lower tier. And so, but hey, man, you go a long ways away and find a way to win a game on the road. You don't apologize for it. You salute. You move on. You move on to the next one, and you embrace it. And I think to their credit, because they could have let Cincinnati beat them twice, especially getting down 14-0 early. And so, but yeah, I that's my thing with as I look at the game on paper, and it's not played that way. I'm trying to figure out, okay, if Jalon Daniels were not to play really well, how else would this get done? And is that Texas Tech, shooting themselves in the foot repeatedly again and being undisciplined in the red zone and these false start penalties and having to settle for field goals and, or do you give up some special teams play? You had a couple of missed field goals last week. You were 5 of 7 from your field goal kickers because you are rotating kickers, which is very bizarre. It's a very outside the box right now. They still have this kicking competition going into the season. At some point, does it bite you? I don't know. But it should be fun. Either way, these two teams are going to be in the upper half of the Big 12 when all is said and done. So I'm looking forward to it. And hopefully, I don't know, are you coming down here or no?
I will not, but hey, this is a good opportunity. If there are any KU fans going down to Lubbock, where do you recommend going before the game?
Well, yeah, you want to go eat at Evie Mae's. It's like one of the top barbecue places in the state of Texas. It's out in Wolforth, which is just like 10 minutes outside of town. Dirk's for steak fingers and chicken strips and things like that. It's homemade. It's like the jalapeno cream gravy. It's phenomenal. There's a couple of sweet spots there on a Friday or a Saturday if they come into town. You can't go wrong. Or Las Brisas for a fancy steak. So, yeah, there you go.
Okay. Well, there you go. There's your spots to go to. Well, Chris, man, appreciate the time this week, and should be a fun one this weekend.
Hey, DJ, appreciate you having me on, brother, and we'll talk next time. I go Mahomes, go Chiefs, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, that we can agree on for sure.
We're simpatico there, I guess, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
And well, go Taylor Swift. Go Taylor Swift, too.
Yeah, right? Yeah, new album out. Yeah, let's Taylor Swift. Maybe that'll help our SEO on this one as well.
Yeah, we don't want her fans mad at us.
Yeah, no, not at all. Well, that's going to do it for our crossover episode. Locked on Texas Tech. He's Chris Level. Locked on Jayhawks. I'm Derek Johnson. Again, catch us anywhere you get your podcasts, including on your YouTube page. Make sure you're subscribing. Hit that little like button if you could. Helps us out on our end of things. And we'll see you next time for another edition of Locked On.